U.S. President Donald Trump made a statement regarding the upcoming meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian leader Vladimir Putin, noting that in order for it to take place, he would have to intervene.
I will probably have to intervene. They hate each other so much that they can barely speak. They are simply unable to talk to each other.
The American president did not answer the question about the possible timing of such a meeting, only noting that it would happen relatively soon. Talks about a personal meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin intensified after negotiations between the Russian dictator and Donald Trump in Alaska. However, later on, this idea was rejected in Russia. Putin stated that he was ready to meet with the Ukrainian president in Moscow, but Zelenskyy rejected this proposal. At the same time, Donald Trump accused Europe of not imposing tough enough sanctions against Russia, emphasizing that further U.S. steps on sanctions would depend on whether European countries strengthen their own restrictive measures.
Listen, Europe, they're my friends, but they're buying oil from Russia, so you can't expect us to be the only ones acting at full capacity. I don't want them to buy oil.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who blocked aid to Ukraine in 2024, stated that the time for new sanctions against Russia has long since come. However, the U.S. Congress will not pass them without agreement from the American President Donald Trump. At the same time, Congress is planning to revive Senator Lindsey Graham's bill on hellish sanctions against Russia. The idea is to put to a vote as a single package the budget bill, which the Republicans need, and the bill on sanctions against Russia. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski called on NATO and EU countries to consider imposing a no-fly zone and urged allies to consider intercepting Russian drones over Ukrainian territory. In an interview with Die Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, he stated that it would be beneficial if Ukraine asked third countries to shoot down drones in its airspace. Sikorski also added that from a technical standpoint, allies could jointly maintain a no-fly zone. According to him, this issue had already been discussed previously under U.S. President Joe Biden. At the same time, the Polish diplomat emphasized that Europeans must accept the fact that it will be Ukrainians who will train Western military personnel to counter the Russians. In Moscow, Poland's statements were met with hysteria. In particular, the controversial deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, stated that establishing a no-fly zone over Ukraine and allowing NATO countries to shoot down Russian UAVs would mean a war between the alliance and Russia. He also threatened that if Brussels decides to transfer Russian assets to Ukraine as a loan, the Russian Federation will pursue EU countries in all possible international and national courts until the end of time. Earlier, The Guardian published an article by a group of military experts who are demanding the implementation of the European project, Sky Shield. According to their data, it would be enough to have 120 aircraft to close the skies over Ukraine. The initiative was conceived by the non-governmental organization Price of Freedom and is supported by several hundred European and American politicians and officials. It is assumed that an integrated airspace protection zone would allow the European coalition to neutralize Russian missiles and drones over western Ukraine, while simultaneously protecting critical infrastructure, nuclear power plants, and the civilian population in Ukraine and Europe.
Ukrainian forces have cleared Pankovka and the surrounding areas in the Donetsk region of Russian troops. This was reported by the 1st Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, Azov. It is noted that units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to liberate territories in the Dobropilia direction. At the same time, Russian occupiers are trying to hold their positions and are reinforcing their groups. To increase offensive potential, additional reserves have been redeployed to the area of responsibility of the 1st Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, Azov. In addition, according to Andriy Krishchenko, deputy commander of the Rubizh Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine, work is underway to clear the enemy in the Pokrovsk direction.
Everyone was engaged in eliminating this breakthrough, and within a few days, it was neutralized. The defensive operation is still ongoing.
Krishchenko notes that the Russians are unable to achieve their declared objectives of capturing the Donetsk region. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that the Russian offensive operation on Sumy was completely thwarted by Ukrainian forces. According to the head of state, fighting continues in the border areas of Sumy region, but the Russian group in the Sumy direction has lost its offensive capabilities as a result of massive losses. As military expert Ivan Stupak notes, Ukraine is doing a good job of driving the Russians out of Sumy region. According to the expert,
I assume this is because Russian troops are moving from there toward the Donetsk region. Some are going for recovery to the Kherson region, some are returning to Orikhiv, and some to Pokrovsk. But in any case, Pokrovsk remains number one for Russia.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump's special envoy, Keith Kellogg, believes that Russia is losing the war against Ukraine. He noted that there is no need to fear the Russian military. He further added that he personally does not believe the Russian forces are truly capable of successfully reaching Berlin or indeed anywhere else beyond their current positions. American military personnel carefully observed the recent joint Russian-Belarusian military exercises, paying close attention to their maneuvers and capabilities. The Belarusian Ministry of Defense published a video showing the head of the department, Viktor Krenin, shaking hands with American officers and thanking them for their visit. According to Reuters, the presence of US military officers at the training ground in Belarus was presented by the Belarusian Ministry of Defense as a surprise. It is noted that Viktor Krenin told the American military that they could look at anything that interested them.
We will show you everything that interests you, anything you want. You can go there and take a look, talk to people.
Reuters writes that the presence of American officers at the exercises is a sign of warming relations between Washington and Minsk, which is a close ally of Moscow. The publication recalls that last week, John Cole, a representative of US President Donald Trump, held talks with the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. At that time, the Belarusian authorities agreed to release 52 people, including those convicted on political grounds as well as foreign citizens. In return, the United States eased sanctions against the Belarusian national airline, Belavia. Meanwhile, Keith Kellogg, special representative of US President Donald Trump, stated that Russia is losing the war. According to Union, he made this statement at a conference in Kyiv. According to Kellogg, the American leader asked him this question before meeting with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. At that time, both he and Trump's chief military advisor, Dan Kane, replied that there was no question of a Russian victory. Kellogg emphasized that in reality, Russia is losing this war. The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, announced a phone conversation with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. On his social network, he wrote that the conversation will take place this Friday, September 19th. Trump also added that the major trade meeting in Europe between the US and China went very well. Meanwhile, it has become known that US President Donald Trump may meet with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin during his visit to Malaysia in October this year. According to the publication New Straits Times, the summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations will take place there, to which both the American president and the Kremlin dictator have been invited. Trump has already confirmed his intention to join the summit, despite certain trade disagreements. In addition, Chinese Premier Li Qiang will also attend the summit. However, there is no talk yet of a visit by Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim stated,
We are lucky. Despite the issue of tariffs, President Trump called me and informed me that he will visit Malaysia next month. Premier Li Qiang will also be present.
However, trade relations between Russia and China have faltered. According to Reuters, Beijing's exports and imports in trade with Moscow dropped sharply in August this year. Chinese exports to Russia decreased by 16.4% year-on-year, marking the largest decline since February. Imports originating from Russia also experienced a significant decline, falling by a substantial 17.8%, whereas in the preceding month of July they had actually demonstrated a noticeable increase of 4.4%.
He has lost a lot of weight and moves slowly. Russian journalist Irina Mishina spoke about the illness of Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov. Mishina said that the latest video featuring him looks alarming. According to her, sources in Grozny confirm information about Kadyrov having serious kidney problems. Reportedly, a nephrostomy, a special drainage device for urine, was installed for the politician. In this condition, according to sources, Kadyrov has practically stepped back from running the republic. Key functions have been taken over by the head of the Chechen government, Magomed Daudov, and the security bloc will supposedly be concentrated in the hands of Kadyrov's son, Adam. Back in early August, local television showed Kadyrov inspecting the construction of the Putin district in Grozny. In the footage, he moves slowly and with discomfort. Similar signs were noticed in a September report about his visit to an educational center. At the same time, the camera operators limit themselves to brief, formal shots from a distance. A nephrostomy, which is used for patients with severe kidney problems, allows them to live for years but requires limiting physical activity and leading a cautious lifestyle. Also, the day before, Kadyrov spoke about his son Adam as a possible successor. In an interview with RIA Novosti, the head of Chechnya noted that his 17-year-old son Adam is following the same career path that he did before leading the republic.
Adam grew up by my side, so he already has a wealth of experience and knowledge. He also has practical experience. When I was appointed to the position of First Deputy Prime Minister of the region, I was also young. Nevertheless, Vladimir Vladimirovich entrusted me with this post. Adam is also doing well, and I have no complaints, although as his father, I expect much more from him.
The head of Chechnya also added that his son has not received any undeserved awards. He said that everyone who has given Adam awards has done so for his specific achievements. If you don't believe me, you can talk to him yourself and see that he's a wonderful guy, Kadyrov said.
Russia's war against Ukraine will end soon if Europe contributes to reducing revenues from Russian oil. This was stated by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in an interview with Reuters. He emphasized that Washington will not impose additional tariffs on Chinese goods until European countries introduce high tariffs for India and China. We are talking about imposing tariffs ranging from 50 to 100%. The finance minister criticized some European countries for purchasing Russian oil. Bessent stated,
I guarantee you that if Europe imposes significant secondary tariffs on buyers of Russian oil, the war will end in 60 or 90 days.
Bessent added that the United States is ready to cooperate with European countries to consider tightening sanctions against Russian companies, including major oil companies such as Rosneft and Lukoil. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump accused Europe of not imposing tough enough sanctions against Russia. According to him, NATO and Europe are not doing their job as they continue to buy Russian energy resources. The American president emphasized that he is ready to increase pressure on Russia, provided that Europe takes corresponding actions. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said in an interview with Sky News that the only way to end the fighting is through clear and reliable security guarantees. In the opinion of the head of state, this is possible if U.S. President Donald Trump takes a principled stance and takes steps that would make the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin fear him. Zelenskyy emphasized that the United States is capable of providing Ukraine with enough air defense systems and adopting sanctions that would deal a powerful blow to the Russian economy. U.S. President Donald Trump may meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy next week. This statement was made by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to him, no other leader in the world has done more to end this war than Trump. Rubio noted that the American president has held multiple phone conversations with the head of the Ukrainian state, and there have already been several personal meetings as well. The head of the U.S. State Department added that Trump and Zelenskyy will likely meet again next week in New York. According to Rubio, Donald Trump is trying to do everything possible to bring the war to an end. The U.S. Secretary of State also commented on the issue of imposing additional sanctions against Russia. According to him, the final decision will be made directly by U.S. President Donald Trump.
This will be Trump's decision. He won't beat around the bush.
Marco Rubio reminded that Donald Trump expects Europe to increase tariffs that will hit Russian oil. As Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated, the United States of America must put pressure on the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and impose a powerful package of sanctions against Russia. In an interview with Sky News, the head of state called on the American president to take decisive personal action to stop Putin.
I believe that the U.S. is strong enough to make independent decisions. I believe that Donald Trump can provide us with the air defense systems we need, and the U.S. has enough of them.
Zelenskyy believes that the U.S. can impose sanctions that would deal a powerful blow to the Russian economy, and that Trump has enough strength to make Putin afraid. On the morning of September 16th, a fire broke out in Moscow. Thick black smoke can be seen from several districts of the Russian capital. According to Telegram channels, the fire started on the grounds of the former ZIL factory. Soon it became known that the roof of a building under construction in the Chagall residential complex was on fire. According to SHOT, construction materials and debris on the roof caught fire. It is reported that the fire was successfully contained. Things are also tense in Vladivostok, Russia. On the morning of September 16th, the Shchitovaya district was cordoned off by the military and traffic police stopped all vehicles. According to public sources, local residents reported hearing loud noises. Soon after, the authorities in Vladivostok claimed that there had allegedly been gas equipment explosions in the Shchitovaya district. According to TSN, citing sources in the Shchitovaya settlement area, the main intelligence directorate eliminated occupiers involved in war crimes in Ukraine. There are reports of dead and wounded from the 47th Separate Air Assault Battalion of the 155th Separate Guards Marine Brigade, which took part in the battles near Kyiv, Vuhledar, Mariupol, and in the Kursk and Pokrovsk directions. In the evening of September 15th, the territory of the aggressor country, Russia, was once again attacked by drones. Local public pages reported loud explosions in Kursk. Later, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed to have shot down 87 drones. Meanwhile, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed the strike on the Saratov oil refinery in Russia. The agency reports that the attack was carried out on the night of September 16th. Explosions and a fire were recorded in the area of the facility. The results of the strike are being clarified. As noted by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Saratov oil refinery specializes in producing more than 20 types of petroleum products. It is being reported that this particular enterprise is actively involved in the important process of meeting the various needs of the armed forces of the Russian Federation.
Russians have been advised to forget about easy trips to Europe for the next 10 to 15 years. According to the Telegram channel Kremlin Snuffbox, EU Commissioner Magnus Brunner confirmed and from the channel's perspective made several statements. On the one hand, he threatened to tighten visa restrictions for Russian citizens until the end of 2025. On the other hand, he said that the EU cannot completely ban the issuance of tourist visas to Russians. Kremlin Snuffbox writes that a representative of the Russian Foreign Ministry explained the situation as follows.
There will most likely not be a complete and official ban on issuing Schengen visas to Russian citizens, but traveling to Europe will become extremely difficult. Many will not be granted visas, and many will not be allowed to cross the border. This especially applies to well-known Russians. The West will definitely create problems for them.
Kremlin Snuffbox also refers to a source allegedly close to Vladimir Putin. Supposedly, he spoke in even stronger terms.
Frankly speaking, people will have to forget about traveling to Europe, I think for 10 to 15 years. And that's just as well. Why would a normal Russian even want to go there? In the West, you could be deceived, arrested, and so on. We don't need those visas. We have other priorities.
The Italian news agency ANSA reported that the European Commission may include in the 19th package of sanctions against Russia a ban on issuing tourist Schengen visas to citizens of the aggressor country. The reason is the large number of Russian Federation citizens traveling to the Schengen zone in the summer of 2025. The Telegraph reported that in 2024, the number of Russians staying in hotels in Italy and France increased by more than 19%. Bild reported that Germany wants to push for a stricter visa regime for Russians. The document prepared in Berlin contains a demand for the European Commission to fully implement the recommendations from 2022. Visas for Russian tourists should be significantly reduced. Meanwhile, Estonia has initiated a bill that will close the border with Russia. Discussions about closing the land border with Russia are underway in Latvia and Lithuania. Finland has maintained a complete closure of its border with the Russian Federation, closed the border from the Belarusian side, and so has Poland. Ukrainian defense forces have managed to cut off the wedge of Russian troop advances in the Donetsk region. As a result, a significant portion of the aggressor country's military has been encircled. The situation was commented on by Georgy Tuka, head of the Luhansk Regional State Administration in 2015 to 2016, in an interview with Priamy TV channel. He recalled that several weeks ago, Russian units made rather rapid advances. However, on September 15th, the military portal Defense Express reported that Ukrainian defenders managed to halt this advance.
If they do manage to accomplish what Defense Express is describing, then most likely the Russians will be taken prisoner and exchanged for our guys. This needs to be done. It is extremely important to free our prisoners.
Journalist Magnaki stated that in the Dobropilya direction, the Russian Federation's troops are under threat of encirclement.
The main intrigue in this direction, and perhaps on the entire front, is whether the Ukrainian forces will be able to close this encirclement, effectively eliminating all the territorial gains achieved by the Russian armed forces during their breakthrough, as well as a large number of their personnel.
Meanwhile, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces clarified the results of strikes on the command posts of Russian occupiers in the Donetsk region on September 8 and August 28. The military confirmed that enemy personnel were hit, including members of the command staff. They recalled that on September 8, 2025, units of Ukraine's defense forces delivered a comprehensive fire strike on the command posts of Russian troops in the temporarily occupied territory of Donetsk region.
The command posts of the Center Troop Grouping and the 41st Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation's ground forces were hit. It is these enemy military formations that are operating in the Pokrovsk direction.
It is also noted that prior to this, on August 28, the command posts of Russian troops in this direction were visited by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Andrei Belousov. And shortly after his visit, the mentioned command locations of the occupying army were successfully struck. The President of the United States has made a new statement regarding the aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. Donald Trump stated that the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy will be forced to sign a ceasefire agreement with Russia. Trump also said that he would have to sit in the same room for negotiations with Zelenskyy and Putin since they cannot be together.
It takes two to tango. You know, these are two people, Zelenskyy and Putin, who hate each other. And it looks like I'll have to sit in the room with them because they can't be in the same room together. There's a lot of hatred there.
The day before, Donald Trump for the first time called Russia the aggressor in the war against Ukraine. As Politico writes, such a statement demonstrates a shift in his position toward Moscow.
This week, 8,000 soldiers from both countries have died, a few more from Russia, but when you're the aggressor, you lose more.
Meanwhile, it has become known that US President Donald Trump may meet with Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy next week in New York. This was stated by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The Ukrainian side has not yet confirmed the possibility of such a meeting. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy called on Trump to take a clear stance on the issue of sanctions against Russia and security guarantees for Ukraine. In an interview with Scanius, the Ukrainian leader expressed the opinion that the head of the White House should personally take decisive action and make Putin fear him. Zelenskyy believes that the United States is strong enough to make its own decisions. On September 14th, Donald Trump stated that he is ready to strengthen U.S. sanctions against Russia, provided that Europe also tightens its restrictions in line with Washington's actions. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent believes that the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine would have ended within 60 to 90 days if European countries had imposed tariffs on buyers of Russian oil. According to Bessent, this would have cut off the main source of income for the Russian Federation.
On September 16th, US President Donald Trump arrived in the United Kingdom. The first day of the visit did not go as planned. There, activists in particular projected a giant image of Trump together with Jeffrey Epstein, who was convicted of sexual offenses, onto Windsor Castle. Police have already detained 4 people on suspicion of malicious communications. The American president will be received by King Charles III, and the parties are expected to sign an agreement on cooperation in the fields of artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and nuclear energy. According to the politician, this is intended not only to emphasize the alliance between the two countries, but also to help King Charles persuade Putin to provide greater support for Ukraine in defending against Russian aggression. The publication notes that Trump has deep respect for and commitment to the royal family. Before departing for his visit to the United Kingdom, Donald Trump spoke with the press. The US president avoided answering a question from a Ukrainian journalist about the delivery of 17 Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, which had been promised 2 months earlier.
I love Ukraine, I love the Ukrainian people, but your country has serious problems. This should never have happened. This war should never have taken place. Your country has very serious problems, but I will stop this.
At the same time, Trump reacted unexpectedly sharply to a question from an Australian journalist about his business activities.
In my opinion, you are doing great harm to Australia right now. They want to be friends with me. Your leader will be coming to see me soon. I will tell him about you. You have set a very bad tone.
After that, the journalist wanted to ask a question about the agreement with the United Arab Emirates, but Trump advised him to keep quiet. NATO countries are strengthening their defenses. British Typhoon fighter jets are ready to shoot down Russian drones over Poland. According to The Guardian, this was stated by the UK Defence Secretary John Healey. According to him, the fighter jets will carry out air defence missions over Poland to counter aerial threats from Russia, including drone attacks. Measures to destroy UAVs will be taken if there is a threat to the lives of Polish citizens. Healey noted that Typhoon fighter jets may expand their operations into Romanian territory if necessary. He explained that the aircraft are operating as part of patrols over the airspace of NATO's eastern flank, and the decision on their deployment will be made by the alliance. Earlier, on September 11th, Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz stated that the United Kingdom and France plan to send Rafale and Eurofighter fighter jets to Eastern Europe. It should be noted that NATO countries have significantly stepped up their activities following the violation of Polish airspace by Russian drones on September 10th. In addition, a few days ago, a Russian drone entered Romanian territory. In response to the UAV attack, Poland announced the launch of the NATO mission Eastern Sentinel, which involves the deployment of additional ground forces and aircraft. Meanwhile, information has emerged about how many Mirage 2005 F-fighter jets Ukraine could have received. This data was published by Defense Express, based on the annual report of the French Ministry of Defense. It is noted that, as of December last year, the French Air Force had 23 Mirage fighter jets. Previously, there were 28 units. Analysts believe that at the beginning of this year, Ukraine could have received up to 5 fighter jets that were withdrawn from the French Air Force. Polish President Karol Nawrocki supports the deployment of nuclear weapons in his country. He stated this in an interview with the French channel LCI. When asked by a journalist whether he hopes that French nuclear weapons will be stationed in Poland, the Polish leader answered affirmatively. He stated,
"As the President of the Republic of Poland, I believe that Poland should participate in nuclear sharing. It is imperative that the nation should develop and maintain its very own nuclear energy, civilian and military capabilities. The partnership between Poland and France is based precisely on this."
Navrotsky emphasized that he wants to do everything to ensure security guarantees for Poland and believes that his country should participate in nuclear sharing. Such statements by the President of Poland come against the backdrop of nuclear weapons being deployed in neighboring Belarus. Just recently, they boasted that during the joint West 2025 exercises with Russia, they practiced the deployment of the Oreshnik missile system. As is known, it is capable of carrying nuclear warheads. Earlier, Karol Nawrocki signed a decision allowing foreign armed forces to remain on Polish territory. This concerns the NATO operation Eastern Shield. This happened after, on September 10th, Russian drones violated Polish airspace. A total of 21 drones were recorded. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump sent a letter to Karol Nawrocki. According to RMF24, the document was sent to Warsaw through the Polish embassy in Washington. The contents of the letter are still unknown. It should be noted that after the Russian drone attack on Poland, Trump and Nawrocki had a phone conversation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said in an interview with Sky News that with its missile strikes on Ukraine, Russia is making it clear that it does not want peace.
That they want the war to continue, and that is precisely why they are postponing these meetings regarding decisions and a ceasefire. In any case, this is not a ceasefire.
Zelenskyy noted that he is ready to meet with Trump and Putin without any preconditions, but he is not willing to travel to Moscow for such a meeting.
Russia attacked us. I cannot go to a country when that country, that city, is attacking us. It can't be like that, to travel to their capital under missile fire. After all, we can meet in any other country.
At the same time, Zelenskyy stated that Russian occupation forces are preparing for 2 more offensive operations this fall.
In my opinion. In my view, we acted very promptly and completely disrupted 2 offensive operations. As for the third one, I think, to be honest, in a day or 2 we'll see that they have suffered heavy losses and that nothing worked out for them. But I need another day or 2 before I can say this publicly.
According to Zelenskyy, things went even worse for the Russian invaders than they had expected. The president of Ukraine suggested that Poland would not be able to save people if they were subjected to a massive air attack.
They are not at war, so it's understandable that they are not prepared for such things. But even if you compare 810 and we shot down more than 700, while they had, I think, 19 drones and shot down 4. They didn't have missiles flying at them, and there were no ballistic attacks. And of course, they won't be able to save people if they face a massive attack.
Zelenskyy added that Ukraine can train and instruct military personnel from other partner countries, since they have been very helpful since the very beginning of the war. Meanwhile, it has become known that the administration of US President Donald Trump approved the first package of military aid to Ukraine, which was paid for by NATO. This was reported by Reuters. This will be the first use of a new mechanism developed by the US and its allies to supply Ukraine with US weapons and supplies funded by NATO countries.
Russia is withdrawing its troops from Belarusian territory after the Russian-Belarusian military exercises Zapad 2025. This was stated at a briefing by the representative of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, Andriy Demchenko. He noted that the exercises ended on September 16th, and now there is a withdrawal of Russian forces from Belarusian territory.
Now that the most active phase has concluded, they are currently in the process of preparing their departure towards Russian territory. It is our sincere hope that they will indeed continue to proceed in that specific direction, and that there will not be any other unforeseen developments that could potentially threaten the security of our country.
According to him, the number of Russian forces involved in the exercises on the territory of Belarus this year was insignificant. Nevertheless, despite this, Ukrainian intelligence units, the Ministry of Defense, and the State Border Guard Service continue to monitor how the situation is developing in Belarus after the exercises have ended. Demchenko noted that this direction will continue to pose a threat as long as Belarus does not stop supporting the aggressor country, Russia. According to the representative of the Border Service, there were no provocations during the exercises.
We were thoroughly prepared for a wide variety of potential situations, including the possibility of deliberate provocations occurring at our national border, as well as sophisticated information-based attacks. But if we speak specifically about the direction of the border with Ukraine from the territory of Belarus, no particular threats to our country have been observed.
Against the backdrop of the Russian-Belarusian military exercises, European countries have strengthened their defenses. For example, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia have partially closed their airspace. In addition, Poland has completely closed the Polish-Belarusian border. And NATO has launched Operation Eastern Shield to strengthen the defense of Eastern Europe, which involves the deployment of additional ground forces and aviation. Ramzan Kadyrov reacted sharply to the positive remarks made by the legendary singer Alla Pugacheva about Dzhokhar Dudayev. He urged people not to provoke Chechens, saying that enemies of the people like Pugacheva should not be reflecting on the history of the Chechen people, Kadyrov stated. On September 10th, a 3-hour interview with Alla Pugacheva by journalist Ekaterina Gordeva was released on YouTube, in which the singer mentioned, among other things, the First Chechen War.
The First Chechen War especially stuck in my memory because I knew Dzhokhar Dudayev. He was such a decent, honorable, cultured person, a handsome man.
The prima donna also recalled Dzhokhar Dudayev's wife, Alla Dudayeva, who is an artist, writer, and politician.
She called me as if she thought I could somehow help. But what could I have done to help? Nothing. I couldn't do anything to keep Dzhokhar alive.
In the 1990s, Dzhokhar Dudayev was the leader and first president of the self-proclaimed Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. He was killed by a Russian missile in April 1996. Ramzan Kadyrov himself has health problems. Back in 2024, the publication Novaya Gazeta Europe reported that Kadyrov had been suffering for more than 5 years from a disease, pancreatic necrosis. In February 2025, he had another crisis. After that, he had a nephrostomy placed. On May 6 of the same year, Kadyrov stated that he had asked the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to dismiss him from his post, but he remained in charge of Chechnya. Kadyrov's negative remarks about Pugacheva may be related to the fact that, after just one interview, the prima donna became more popular than dictator Vladimir Putin. The YouTube channel Popular Politics drew attention to this.
Alla Pugacheva's interview with Ekaterina Gordeva on YouTube garnered almost 18 million views in just a few days. That's twice as many as Putin's historical lecture to Tucker Carlson, which was published on the Kremlin's channel. There, this masterpiece has gained 7.5 million views in over a year.
It should be noted that after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Alla Pugacheva left the country with her family. The conversation with Ekaterina Gordeva was the singer's first major interview since the start of the war. US President Donald Trump stated that the dictator of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, let him down.
The US has resolved 7 wars.
I thought the war in Ukraine would be the easiest option because of my relationship with President Putin. But he let me down. He really let me down. Trump emphasized that Putin is killing a lot of people and is losing more people than he is killing. At the same time, the US president stated that Russia's aggression against Ukraine will be brought to an end. He added that he is counting on good news regarding a peaceful settlement in Ukraine. The British Prime Minister emphasized that Putin has shown his true colors as the largest offensive since the Russian Federation's invasion of Ukraine is currently underway, and added that he discussed Russia's war against Ukraine and additional pressure on the Russian Federation with Trump. At the same time as Donald Trump's speech in Britain, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, at a meeting with leaders of the parliamentary faction, stated that there are 700,000 Russian occupiers on the front lines in Ukraine.
There are more than 700,000 people on the line of combat contact.
Let us recall that after the meeting between the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump in Alaska, Russia's massive strikes on peaceful Ukrainian cities only intensified. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski pointed out that such attacks indicate that Russia is not ready for peace. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has repeatedly stated that he is ready to meet with Putin, because only this format of negotiations can bring peace closer. In turn, the head of the Kremlin has also claimed to be supposedly ready to meet, but there has been no concrete action from Moscow so far. Recently, the American president himself stated that the US could deliver a strong blow to Russia through sanctions. The targets would be Russian oil and banks. Trump also confirmed at a press conference in Britain that the power of the Russian Federation depends on oil prices. He noted that if the price of oil falls, Putin will have no choice but to end his aggression against Ukraine. The president of Kazakhstan stated that the likelihood of Armageddon is high. That is exactly how he described the risks of nuclear conflict at the Congress of World Religious Leaders in Astana.
Experts assess the likelihood of such an Armageddon as the highest it has been in recent decades. Unfortunately, instead of constructive initiatives and a policy of détente, confrontational thinking is gaining momentum in the world, geopolitical rifts are widening, and social tension is growing.
The president of Kazakhstan has repeatedly spoken about the importance of nuclear disarmament. In May of this year, citing international experts, Tokayev stated that the risk of nuclear warheads being used is increasing, and this could happen due to miscalculation, accident, or escalation. One of the Russians' favorite threats is the use of nuclear weapons, the quality and accuracy of which is debatable. During testing in Russia, a Sarmat nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile exploded right in the silo. Experts suggest that the cause was problems with the liquid propulsion system, according to Der Spiegel. At the same time, the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, claimed that the Russian Sarmat can bypass all modern missile defense systems, as it possesses superior tactical and technical characteristics. Additionally, Deputy Chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Dmitry Medvedev, lashed out with threats against the countries that most recently joined NATO, stating that they automatically became targets for the Russian armed forces, including possible retaliatory strikes and even the nuclear component. On June 5th, flying objects were seen over Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and the aggressor country Russia.
On social networks, information spread that
it was a Russian experimental ballistic missile called Oreshnik. At that time, Kazakhstan's Ministry of Defense denied the report about the missile and emphasized that no violations of Kazakhstan's airspace had been recorded. The Ministry of Defense suggested that the glowing objects in the sky were the remains of debris from a spacecraft. Earlier, Forbes reported that the Russian Federation had launched an Oreshnik ballistic missile toward Kiev, but it fell on Russian territory. Russian propagandist Vladimir Solovyov found himself in a scandal. In his TV segment about the Russian Federation's army, details of the interior revealed the location of the Rubicon base, which belongs to the elite drone unit of the Russian army. The investigation was carried out by journalists from Radio Svoboda, who exposed the propagandist's major blunder. As it turned out, the base is not located in a secret bunker at all, but in the Patriot Exhibition Center near Moscow, the very place where army shows and exhibitions for tourists are held. It was the details from Solovyov's video, not the official videos from the Ministry of Defense or Rubicon itself, that made it possible to pinpoint the exact location. In May 2025, this center was hit by a Ukrainian drone called Lyutyi. Journalist Mel Kaneker revealed who the Rubicon unit reports to.
an important discovery. Within the Russian army, Rubicon is overseen by the Directorate for Advanced Inter-Service Research and Special Projects. This little-known military structure, which has nevertheless been actively involved in negotiations with Iran, may also be responsible for the Shaheds, and for all relatively effective projects of the Russian Ministry of Defense related to modern technologies.
At the same time, the journalist noted that this unit is facing huge losses at the front.
They are frequently targeted by strikes that are not publicly reported. In circles close to Rubicon, the unit has already gained a reputation as a mass grave.
The YouTube channel Popular Politics emphasizes that the command of the Russian Ministry of Defense is turning the civilian facility Patriot into a legitimate target.
And Solovyov can very well expect gratitude from Zelenskyy for helping the front.
Earlier, Solovyov complained about changes in his life after the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by the aggressor country Russia. After all, he dreamed of spending his old age quietly, but instead he has to travel to the front.
Drones attacked the Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat plant in Bashkortostan, according to Russian social media channels. Explosions were heard in the city and smoke was visible. Something's not right here. The head of Bashkortostan, Radi Kabirov, confirmed the drone attack on the petrochemical complex. According to him, preliminary reports indicate that an oil processing unit was hit. Kabirov wrote the following on his Telegram channel.
2 fixed-wing drones attacked the facility. There are no casualties or injuries. Both passive and active defenses were activated. The facility's security opened fire to neutralize the threat. We are currently assessing the extent of the damage. We are now extinguishing the fire. All emergency services are on site.
Let us recall that during the night of Tuesday, September 16th, drones attacked the Russian cities of Saratov and Engels. Explosions were heard. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed that the Saratov oil refinery in Russia was hit. The agency reported that the attack took place during the night of September 16th. Explosions and a fire were recorded in the area of the facility. The Saratov oil refinery specializes in producing more than 20 types of petroleum products. It is reported that the plant is involved in meeting the needs of the Russian armed forces. Just over the summer, Ukraine struck 10 Russian oil refineries with drones, disabling about 17% of their capacity. That's more than 1 million barrels of processing per day, according to Reuters. According to the agency, Ukraine has carried out a series of massive drone attacks on oil refineries in the Russian Federation and managed to reduce their capacity by almost a fifth within 30 days. At the same time, many regions of Russia have faced gasoline shortages.
King Charles III delivered a speech and made a statement in support of Ukraine. This took place during a banquet procession in St. George's Hall at Windsor Castle, where the President of the United States, Donald Trump, his wife, Melania Trump, and other American officials were present.
Today, as tyranny once again threatens Europe, we and our allies are uniting in support of Ukraine to deter aggression and ensure peace.
At that moment, the American leader simply nodded. The British monarch recalled Trump's efforts to establish peace throughout the world. The king noted his personal dedication to seeking solutions for some of the world's most difficult conflicts. Interestingly, US President Donald Trump has been criticized for breaking protocol during his state visit to Britain when meeting with King Charles. 2 such incidents were caught on camera by American TV channels that were broadcasting from the castle. In particular, during his visit to Windsor, Trump patted King Charles III on the back. Touching the monarch in the United Kingdom is considered a serious breach of royal etiquette. According to established rules, it is not customary to touch the king unless he initiates it. The only exception is a handshake if the monarch himself offers his hand. In all other cases, it is considered proper to limit oneself to a slight bow or a nod of the head. In addition, during the inspection of the Royal Guard, Trump walked ahead of King Charles while conversing with one of the Royal Guardsmen. After such scenes, Newsweek journalists requested a comment at Windsor Castle. A source from the royal family told the publication that, according to protocol, the head of state making the visit always goes first. In the video filmed before the inspection of the honor guard began, it is clear that King Charles invites Trump to walk ahead of him. It also became known that Trump's plane, on its way to the UK, nearly collided with a passenger airliner over New York, according to Bloomberg. According to the agency, the air traffic controller noticed the dangerous approach and instructed the crew to change course to avoid a collision. Putin has dismissed an advisor who spoke out against the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin's decision confirms Moscow's commitment to maximalist military objectives, analysts from the Institute for the Study of War note. This concerns Dmitry Kozak, the former deputy head of the Kremlin administration and one of Vladimir Putin's closest advisors. The official resigned after many years of disagreements with the Russian leader's policy regarding the war against Ukraine. The politician submitted a resignation letter of his own accord. Dmitry Kozak's resignation from the post of deputy head of the Russian presidential administration has been accepted, an informed source told Interfax on Thursday. Friday will be his last working day in his previous position, the source stated. According to analysts, Kozak advocated for peace talks with Kiev, and his dismissal indicates the Kremlin's intention to continue its military campaign. Kozak was the only participant at the Security Council meeting on February 21, 2022, who spoke out against a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. That is why, immediately after the war began, Putin removed Kozak from work related to Ukraine and excluded him from the information agenda. Kozak also oversaw the Kremlin strategy in Ukraine until 2022, after which part of his authority was transferred to Sergei Kirienko. The politician's departure strengthens Sergei Kirienko's position in Putin's administration. He has already taken control of the Kremlin's portfolio on Moldovan affairs and is influencing strategy in Ukraine. The fact that Putin does not want peace is also evidenced by Donald Trump's failed attempts to bring Moscow to the negotiating table. Before departing for the United Kingdom, the US president stated that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy would have to reach an agreement with Moscow to end the war in Ukraine. Trump did not specify exactly what kind of agreement he was referring to. The American leader also allowed for the possibility that he would be present at potential negotiations between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin.
It is not yet time to demand that the Kremlin agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. This opinion was expressed by the US president in comments to journalists before his visit to the United Kingdom. At the same time, he said that ending Russia's war against Ukraine should be facilitated by a drop in oil prices.
It seems that now is not the time to ask Putin for a ceasefire. If I have to demand a ceasefire, I will take tough measures. It is necessary to further lower oil prices. If oil prices fall, the war between Russia and Ukraine will end.
The US president also stated that if Europe acted decisively against China, Beijing might have forced Russia to stop the war against Ukraine.
If Europe had done something regarding China, I think China probably could have forced an end to the war in Ukraine.
The US president also reiterated his point that the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, have a terrible relationship and hate each other.
I mean, ending the war largely depends on their relationship. They really don't like each other. They hate each other. Let's see what happens next. I think we'll find a solution.
Trump emphasized that he is disappointed in Putin and admitted that he considered the war in Ukraine the easiest to resolve.
I thought the war in Ukraine would be the easiest option because of my relationship with President Putin. But he let me down. He really let me down.
Trump stated that Putin is killing a lot of people and is losing more people than he is killing. The US president expressed hope that the incident involving a drone entering Poland from the Russian Federation was caused by a loss of control over the UAV.
I can't comment on that. They shouldn't have been there. They were disabled. The biggest attack on a drone is disabling it.
At the same time, the US president stated that Russia's aggression against Ukraine will be brought to an end. And he added that he is counting on good news regarding a peaceful settlement in Ukraine.
Allies have come up with an alternative to NATO for Ukraine. Since Kyiv has little chance of joining the alliance, its Western allies have adopted an alternative strategy to help repel Russian aggression, writes The Washington Post. The publication notes that this refers to military investments in Ukraine's defense industry so that it can better defend itself. It is noted that if this strategy works, then Ukraine's defense industry will eventually be able to help equip the American and European armies with modern drones and other military equipment that is being developed in the context of the war with Russia. The article states that one of the latest achievements in Ukraine's domestic arsenal is a quadcopter drone capable of bypassing Russian jamming devices, flying more than 20 kilometers, and dropping 6 kilograms of guided explosives on tanks and other valuable targets. Ukrainians are also world leaders in drone technology. Currently, the US is working with Ukrainians to ensure the exchange of drone technologies, which is very important, said Keith Kellogg, the Trump administration's special envoy to Ukraine, at a press conference in Kyiv. Meanwhile, the European Commission has adopted the 19th package of sanctions against Russia, said European Commission spokesperson Paola Pinho, as reported by The Guardian. As part of the package of measures, the EU is lowering the oil price cap to $47.60 per barrel and is banning the import of Russian liquefied gas into Europe. A complete ban on transactions has been imposed on Rosneft, Gazprom Neft, and other companies, including some in China. Sanctions are also being imposed against another 118 ships of the Shadow Fleet, as well as blocking operations for a number of banks in Russia and third countries. The president of Kazakhstan has left for a working visit to the United States to participate in the 80th United Nations General Assembly. Earlier, at the Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions in Astana, he stated that the likelihood of Armageddon is high. This is exactly how Tokayev spoke about the risks of nuclear conflict. The president of Kazakhstan has repeatedly spoken about the importance of nuclear disarmament and that the risk of using nuclear warheads is increasing. And this could happen due to miscalculation, accident, or escalation. The country that likes to threaten with nuclear weapons is the Russian Federation. The country's top leadership has repeatedly threatened to launch weapons of mass destruction against peaceful nations. Meanwhile, Tokayev stated that Kazakhstan does not intend to join BRICS. According to him, he is guided by pragmatic considerations and believes that partner status in the organization is sufficient. He noted that the question is about the usefulness of full membership. And he pointed out that BRICS has neither a charter nor a secretariat nor any programs. Back in 2022, the president of Kazakhstan personally stated in the presence of Russian President Vladimir Putin that he does not recognize the quasi-state entities in Donbass.
We do not officially recognize the independent statehood of Taiwan, nor the self-proclaimed independence of Kosovo, nor the disputed territory of South Ossetia, nor the breakaway region of Abkhazia. And quite apparently, this established principle of non-recognition will also be consistently applied to other similar quasi-state territories, which, in our considered view, unequivocally include the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk, both of which are currently experiencing significant geopolitical tensions and international scrutiny.
The director of the Institute for Strategic Security Studies, Pavel Lyusyansky, stated that Russia wants to seize 3 northern regions of Kazakhstan. That is precisely why President Tokayev went against the dictator Vladimir Putin. He noted that in Kazakhstan, they have always understood the danger coming from the Russian Federation.
The border between Russia and Kazakhstan has come to a standstill. At 3 customs checkpoints on both sides, multi-kilometer-long traffic jams of trucks have formed. There are no official explanations from either side, only rumors about new procedures and additional inspections. The Russian portal Business FM also reported on the traffic jams at the border. A businessman contacted their editorial office and reported queues at the border crossings, which, by modest estimates, will take a week to get through. The entrepreneur clarified that at least 5,000 trucks have gathered at the checkpoints on each side, and the traffic jam is at a standstill, barely moving. According to the businessman, previously it took 10 to 15 minutes to inspect one truck at the border, but now vehicles are waiting for hours. Rumors are circulating in the queue that on the Russian side, the delays may be related to a new system for processing documents for all foreigners entering the country, who are now required to obtain a RUID through the government services portal and notify authorities of their entry 72 hours in advance. And on the Kazakh side, they are reportedly conducting more thorough cargo inspections and searching for Chinese dual-use goods. At the same time, the president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, spoke about the risks of nuclear conflict at the Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions in Astana.
Experts currently assess the likelihood of such a catastrophic Armageddon as the highest it has been in recent decades. Unfortunately, instead of constructive initiatives and a policy of genuine détente, confrontational thinking is steadily gaining significant momentum in the world. Geopolitical rifts are noticeably widening, and social tension is progressively growing.
The president of Kazakhstan has repeatedly spoken about the importance of nuclear disarmament. In May of this year, citing international experts, Tokayev stated that the risk of the use of nuclear warheads is increasing and that this could happen due to miscalculation, accident, or escalation. At the same time, one of the favorite threats of Kazakhstan's neighboring country, Russia, is the use of nuclear weapons, the quality and accuracy of which is open to debate. The armed forces of Ukraine flooded and damaged a pipe that Russian invaders were trying to use to advance toward Kupiansk. Our artillery is stopping their attempts to move forces across the Oskil River by boat. This was reported by the Operational Command North of the Ukrainian ground forces. It is noted that the situation in the Kupiansk direction remains tense. The city is a strategic target for the enemy.
The gas pipeline has been damaged and flooded.
Ukrainian public pages are massively posting videos. It is claimed that barbed wire has appeared inside the pipes through which the occupiers are crawling toward Kupiansk. Such engineering barriers are being laid by ground drones of the Ukrainian armed forces. Let us recall that on September 12th, Deep State reported that Russian troops are entering Kupiansk through a gas pipeline. This is already the third case, after Avdiivka and Sudzha, where the occupiers have used gas pipelines to infiltrate the rear of the Ukrainian armed forces. According to Deep State, the Russians have built an entire logistical artery.
The entrances to the pipeline are located in the area of Lyman Pershai. Specially designed wheeled carts are used for moving inside the pipeline, as well as electric scooters where the height allows. The route to the outskirts of Kupiansk takes about 4 days. Therefore, special rest areas and food supplies have been set up along the way.
It is claimed that in this way, organized enemy groups were able to reach Radkivka without significant losses, and from there move south into the forest they control. After that, they dispersed in Kupiansk and made their way to the railway. According to the Operational Command North, counter-sabotage measures are currently being carried out. Our defenders are blocking and destroying the enemy in the forests, dacha settlements near Kupiansk, and in the surrounding areas of the city. Prisoners testify to the lack of clear combat order among the invaders, the report notes.
There has been another earthquake in Kamchatka.
And it's shaking again, quite noticeably even now, and it shook pretty hard indeed with considerable force.
When is this finally going to stop, huh? How long has it been? Every day it's already turning into some kind of nightmare. According to the US Geological Survey, the earthquake had a magnitude of 7.8. Later, the region's governor, Vladimir Solodov, stated that according to updated data, it was 7.2. The new earthquake triggered a series of tsunami warnings in the region. Experts are predicting possible waves up to 1.5 meters high. Eyewitnesses complain that it's very hard to get used to such earthquakes. One of the local residents said that this isn't the first time he's experienced an earthquake.
The forecasts, of course, are discouraging, you could say. I was born here, have lived for 66 years, and I know Kamchatka well. It's a shame, of course, that now my grandchildren have become afraid of all these earthquakes. Well, you know, it's been shaking for 2 months already.
Another local resident shared her experience of living through the earthquake.
Then everything started swaying more and more strongly, really very strongly. All the bottles and creams fell off my dressing table. The experience, of course, was terrifying.
This is not the first earthquake in Kamchatka this year. On July 30th, an earthquake with a magnitude of 8.8 became the strongest in the world in the past 14 years and the strongest in the region since 1952. Over the following 2 weeks, several more or less powerful earthquakes occurred in the region. The largest of these was the earthquake on September 13th, whose magnitude was estimated between 7.1 and 7.7. Military and political expert Alexander Musienko reports that there is a theory that the powerful earthquake and tsunami near Kamchatka were caused by an explosion carried out by the Russian Federation.
In this way, they, with China, want to test the capabilities of a new dangerous weapon that is capable of causing natural disasters and catastrophes. This could be tectonic or nuclear weaponry.
Meanwhile, the Telegram channel CHP Kamchatka reports that on September 19th, the Shiveluch volcano became active. It spewed ash up to 4.5 kilometers high. The ash plume stretched 20 kilometers to the north of the volcano.